Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to the Daily Six. Let's talk about shipbuilding today, about the boat that God had Noah build as an ark of safety to all the animals and to save humanity. Genesis chapter 6, get it open. Let's see what God does. Come on with me. If you're like most people, you grew up knowing the story of Noah and his ark. Even children's rooms are adorned with all the images of the animals and the ship and the water, and they're all smiling, and there's a rainbow overhead, because it's a story of salvation. Now, it is a brutal story of God's judgment, his destruction upon his creation, because of how corrupt and how evil they had become. We've read that the last couple of days, that the entire world had become corrupt, that all of their thoughts were only and always evil. And so God was so grieved, his heart was so hurt, he was filled with such negative emotions, such great pain. And he saw in his wisdom the only way to really address the problem was to start with a clean slate. But that brutal story and why it ends up being cartoon characters that adorn so many children's bedrooms is because the story actually is a story of salvation. It's a word picture, it's an imagery of ultimately what God is doing for all of humanity. That destruction comes upon us as a human race because of the sin crisis, because we've been so headstrong in all of our thoughts and being corrupt and being evil. And yet, in the midst of that, God is willing to make a covenant, a brand new covenant with you and I. And he made a covenant with Noah. You see it there in Genesis chapter 6, verse 18, where he says, I will establish my covenant with you, Noah. You will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. And you are to bring into the ark two of every living creature, male and female, to keep them alive with you. Two of every kind of bird, every kind of animal, every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. Interesting, something that I noticed there is that Noah's responsibility was to build the ark. You build the ship, and we didn't take time to read all the details. Chapter 6, verse 15 and 16, he's given all the restrictions, measurements, and so forth. It's really a pretty sizable boat, right? But God says, your responsibility, Noah, is to build. And then these creatures, these animals, 2 by 2, male and female, they are going to come to you. Well, how are they going to know to do that? Most living creatures are kind of scared of the human being. There's a natural instinct to flee from danger, and yet the Lord is going to put it on their hearts and lead them into that place of safety. There is an image there for you and I, friends, that God is going to build a deliverance for us from all the judgment that's upon us, upon the human race, and he will move us in the direction of that rescue. So, God tells Noah to do that, build the boat. In verse 22, of every kind, they'll come to you to be kept alive. Verse 21, you're to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and stored away as food for you and for them. And Noah did everything just as God commanded him. So then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Noah, you have been righteous among this people. We've been studying this week. And so God says, now it's time. And so the balance of chapter 7 really is the description of the flood coming. And it rains for 40 days, and the waters spring up from below, and the whole earth is filled with this flood. And the boat, of course, the ship, the ark carries these animals, these creatures, and God is carrying them to safety through the midst of the storm. And one other thing I noticed, as it's all coming to pass and God leads all these animals to them, down in verse 15, pairs of all the creatures that have breath and life in them, they came to Noah, they entered the ark. And the animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. And then the Lord shut him in. I love that phrase, that the Lord is the one who closed them in. It was his responsibility to be faithful, to build the ship, to build the ark. It was God who would lead the animals, leading every kind, and coincidentally, leading one male, one female, and they all came. And once they all got there and they all sensed that safety to enter into that space, the Lord shut them in. And here's the thought. As I'm praying about, Lord, what does this mean for you, for me, for my friends here on Daily 6? What do we do with this? Well, here's the thought that the Lord's just ministering to me today, and I pray that'll speak to you in a fresh way. Friends, we don't like God's judgment coming on the earth, but it is his choice. When God has had enough, his tolerance level for sin has reached its climax, then God will draw a line. But in that judgment, he will always be faithful, that those who are righteous, those who have kept their hearts pure before the Lord, he will rescue. This is the narrative of the whole Bible. Multiple times, over time after time after time, God brings his deliverance to his people, the remnant of those who will seek after the Lord with all their heart. And he'll lead us to that place of safety. And he will be the one to close us in to that which is safe. So here's what I wonder if we could do. Now, as this video comes to an end here, could you give God 6 more minutes as I will? And can you contemplate that place of safety that God is leading you and me to be a part of? And can you visualize him coming alongside, pulling you in, and very carefully closing you into his ark of safety? Can you give God 6 more minutes? Ask him what that place is in your life this season, the spiritual safety he's bringing you into. Make that a point of prayer, and let's come on back tomorrow and see how it all wraps up in Noah's life right here on the Daily 6.